Welcome to Serious Talk. I'm your host, Greg Banks. Today we have a very special guest. We have Jeff Loven, who was most recently recognized as Employee of the Quarter for Q1 2025 at Cirrius Solutions. We had a great conversation covering his life before Salesforce, his journey from pastor to Salesforce engagement manager, life outside of work, and some of the highlights of his first year here at Cirrius. He is a father, a husband, and a remarkable colleague. Thank you for joining us today to learn a little more about Jeff and some of the many reasons he was elected by his peers as Employee of the Quarter. Let's dig right in. Good morning, Jeff. Good to have you with us today. We got on the show Jeff Loven. Jeff joined Cirrius just a little over a year ago. Prior to that, he'd been in the Salesforce ecosystem for about a year and a half. He's 5-time Salesforce certified. He's the engagement manager on Team Delta at Cirrius Solutions. And he was most recently elected as the Employee of the Quarter for Q1 2025. This is a nomination that goes on at Cirrius by all employees. So these recognized above all individuals for this quarter. So Cirrius was founded and operates on 4 core values. Number 1 being customer success as a mission. Number 2 is integrity and transparency always. Number 3 is people are our success. And number 4 is extreme ownership. Some people may have heard those core values, some may have not. Jeff, in my opinion, exemplifies all of these values on top of his daily engagement manager responsibilities, which we'll talk about today. He also has led the entire company in the configuration and support of ClickUp for our company as a project management tool. It's just been a true honor getting to know Jeff since he got here. I'm glad to have a chance to spotlight him today. Jeff, welcome to the show. Thanks for spending some time with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg. Great to be here. It's an honor just to be part of the team here at Cirrius, and I look forward to wandering through some interesting conversation together today.
Yeah, this is a little different. We've been doing the Military Minute, highlighting some of our veterans and military spouses, but this is you're the first non-military guest on the show, so it's great to have you here today. Tell me a little bit about your background, where you live. Tell me a little bit about your family.
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in California. I'm born and raised in Central California. I'm surrounded by farmland and grew up in a small farming community, come from a farming family. And I live in a city called Fresno now. It's the 5th largest city in California. So it's medium-sized, nothing to shout about, but it's home. It's home. I'm here with my wife and kids. My wife, Eve, and I have been married almost 20 years now. We met in high school and have been together ever since. We're high school sweethearts. Went to college together at Fresno State here in the Valley and got married right out of college. And we've got 4 kids. We've got 3 boys and 1 girl. Let's see. We've got our oldest, Josiah, is about to turn 15. We have another son who's 11 named Jericho. Our daughter, Noelle, is 8. And our youngest son is 7 years old. And it's busy times around our house with all of those bundles of energy at various stages. Josiah is very excited about being able to get his learner's permit in about 6 months. And I'm not so much excited at what's going to happen with my monthly premium. My dad is the vice president of an insurance company here in the Valley, and he's been warning me for years.
Yeah, I'm actively shopping insurance right now. It's not fun, and it's like you pay and you pay and you pay, and if you ever ask them to pay, they're probably going to drop you. It's just not a great place to be. So, Good luck to you. Best thing I can say is go get all the driver courses and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It does make a difference. So
that's a good word. Thanks.
I've heard some of your background. I kind of pride myself on not getting too many into the answers to the questions I want to ask before the recording of this. I want to learn about Jeff prior to getting into the ecosystem. I kind of know what that does to your life, but I'm always interested to find out. There's kind of a joke label for most people in the ecosystem that we were accidental admins.
Absolutely.
I was off minding my own business and kind of fell into this. So tell me how you found your way here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, prior to jumping into the Salesforce ecosystem, I was a pastor for 17 years, and my undergrad degree from Fresno State is actually in music. And so I wanted to teach music, ended up, about the time I was ready to exit college, feeling like, I want to work in the church. That's been a really meaningful part of my life, important part of my journey. And I've had some mentors and folks really speak into my life in significant ways while I was in college. And I felt like I really wanted to have an opportunity to be helpful to people on that kind of level as well. So I started working for a church that I had been attending as a college student, did that for 17 years, moved through 8 or 9 different roles in that span of time. It was a great season. Loved most of it, like any other vocation, right? There are some highlights and some lowlights for sure, but I love the vast majority of it. One of I try and live my life by a set of personal values, and the one at the top of the list says people are what matters most, and that career gave me an opportunity to do my best to live into that every day. And that's actually one of the things, we can wander into this later if you like, but that's one of the things that drew me to Cirrius, is the value that people are our success, and that people are what matter, and that everything we do as a company is really the means to an end of being useful human beings and being helpful to other people.
Yeah, that's interesting. I talk to a lot of people, not in the podcast, but just in life, and talk about what other people do. And when I hear the nature of their employee and the companies they work for and the jobs they do, and I think about what we see here at Sirius, how the leaders, I mean, yeah, there's missions, there's focus, there's budgets, there's targets, all those
Yep.
things. But people are never in the backseat of those. It's never a deprioritized thing. And that's really a great point. I got to think, I mean, just reflecting on my life, we just celebrated 30 years of marriage. And I can imagine, those, you just don't realize how much you don't know till you get married, right?
Oh boy.
But you get into that. And I got to think, working in a church, going through those early years, right? The encouragement you must have found for what otherwise can be very disruptive. The first year is the honeymoon. The second year is learning that year two is not the honeymoon. Some of those things. So that had to be encouraging to you. So I got to think, from a completely selfish perspective, being inside of a church there for those first several years of your marriage, really probably helped give you some good roots and whatnot, help you and your wife to learn to navigate life tethered to another person, learning to put their priorities over your own and whatnot as you start having kids. So great to hear. Were you at the same church the entire 17 years?
I sure was.
Fantastic. Good deal. So as you've navigated that, what brought that season to an end? And I'm talking to some different people right now who are on the verge of career changes. And, I think at 25, you have one set of lenses you look at when you start considering where you might want to go and what you want to do. And at 35, it's probably even more different. And I know people in their 50s and 60s that are in some way starting over. And again, running different filters through the questions you ask yourself about where to go next. Tell me a little bit about your passions. I'm sure who you are as a person. You shared a little bit about wanting to help people. Get into some details of those steps, like what were the milestones in going from being employed in the church to being employed in the ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. After 17 years, there was a variety of things, honestly. I was looking for what was next, honestly, in life and in career. And after 17 years, my growth and income generation in that organization was capped. It's a mid-sized church, and I wasn't going to be the lead, and I wasn't going to be the executive director person, and that's okay. I didn't want to be fill either of those roles. I tremendously enjoyed filling the creative director role that I had been for the last 10 years or so. And we live in California, right? And prices all over the country are getting higher, and the cost of living is growing. In some ways, California outpaces the rest of the country, right? I got a growing family, and we're a single income family. Our youngest has special needs. And so my wife doesn't garner an income in the workforce. She does a tremendous amount for our family in keeping us healthy and intact and moving all in the right direction, and is especially pivotal in managing care and the care team for our youngest with special needs. So it became clear that it was really time to think about a wholesale kind of shift in careers into a trajectory that would allow me to have significantly more influence over the way that I'm able to take care of my family financially. My wife had a longtime friend from college, actually, who works at Accenture and has since college as a Salesforce consultant. And they had wandered into a conversation together, and she said, "Hey, you should tell Jeff about Salesforce. I think just the environment and the skills required and things like that might be a really good fit for him." And my wife mentioned it in passing, and this was well over a year before I seriously moved on from from the church. And so on my days off, I'd spend 3 to 4 hours at Panera sipping coffee in the morning and playing with Trailhead, honestly. And one thing led to another, and I ended up in a career development program for Salesforce. And through a mutual connection at the church, I ended up connected to John Klein, who leads Team Maverick, which is connected to Cirrius Solutions. And I ended up jumping on John's sort of commercial dev pod team within the Team Maverick umbrella. That introduced me to Cirrius. And I was immediately taken by Cirrius's values and the way that people matter, and integrity and transparency, ownership, not just for your own actions, but for your team, your fellow employee, that we're better together. And I decided very early on in my time working alongside John that I wanted to land a full-time spot at Cirrius. And so that became my goal. And so for the last 6 months or so, I was working with John. I was in conversation with Tim and Chad and occasionally Al. And one thing led to another. And about a year ago now, I interviewed for a position and was offered that position. And here I am.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, the audience won't know this, but the role that you stepped into was one I was stepping out of.
Yeah.
So we had some interesting conversations at that time with the clients that were engaged
Yeah.
in the projects that were going on. And yeah, you had a short on ramp. there was
I
a
did.
there was
It
a
was
lot
pretty
that you
quick.
stepped into that a lesser man would have folded. Some challenges there. And truthfully, we're consultants, right? The things that we do, I'm not saying that what we do is launching rockets, but they're not the easiest things to do. It's not physically hard per se. It does get tiring sometimes, but I think more you have to dig deep, right? You have to look within. And something that I always said to Team Delta when I was the engagement manager was, we have to remember, A, our clients are people just like us. B, the fact they're talking to us means they're operating from a point of disparity. Nobody wants to hire a lawyer. Nobody wants to hire a consultant.
Yeah.
But inevitably, we find ourselves at places where help is something we need. And so, to watch you come into that role and just the way you navigate yourself, like I hear not just what you're saying, but how you're saying it, and there's a calm that goes with it and intentionality. I always tell people who are interviewing to come here, like if you get out of bed and you want your presence felt, if you want the things you do to affect change, like you actually have an impact on who the company is and how things are going. It's so easy to see here. Every day is a new day. The things that we're doing as a company now were not even on the radar when I got here 3 years ago. And that 3 years feels like a long time some days, but sometimes it feels like 8 minutes. It's like, man, so much change has come. And I credit, again, we talked a little bit in the intro about ClickUp. We'll get to that later. But again, you look at the company, you're doing your job, and you recognize there's a gap here. Any tool that we use should, in fact, be a tool. It should pivot. It should leverage. It should be something that makes your life or your job or your task easier and whatnot. So again, we'll talk through some of those things as we navigate this. But just look outside of Salesforce for a second. Just give us a little when you're not at work, when you're not thinking about work. I know that's hard. That's a hard switch to turn off at 5 o'clock. What are 3 or 4 things that ring your bell? These are passions that you and your wife have, or things you do with your kids, or just, man, I got to step out and go get clarity in my brain. What are some things that you enjoy doing?
Yeah, great question. I'd love to talk about a few of those things. I mean, the first one is family. We are very connected to our families. Most of our family lives locally where we do, within 30 minutes or so. So we have the opportunity to see them frequently. And we're big fans of the "it takes a village to raise your kids" sort of mentality, especially with the quantity that we were lucky to end
You're
up
outnumbered.
with. Yeah, we're doubled up. We are solidly in zone defense here. Not man on man for sure. And even as our small individual family unit, we love spending time together, and we're trying to be intentional about that. And so everything sort of gets filtered through that for us, honestly, when it comes to time and commitments, how we spend our resources, and what we say yes and no to really gets filtered through what it means for our family life together, because my wife and I are very keen on doing everything we can to provide our kids with a space to learn and grow and learn how to be themselves, not who anybody else needs or wants them to be, and learn how to be positive, encouraging, contributing human beings. Of course, we would love for them to develop and choose the belief system that my wife and I have. But that's ultimately not for us to decide, right? We create an environment and allow them to develop and know that they're loved and supported. So family is a big one for us. For me personally, man, I love riding motorcycles. And I love being outdoors, love going camping, love working with my hands, doing DIY kinds of things, tinkering around the house. I really enjoy the whole tech thing. I don't mind spending my working life here in a remote gig on a screen, as it were, but I really enjoy being outside and working with my hands. And there's few things that are as exciting and calming to me as getting out on one of the bikes and riding somewhere for a day.
Cool. So you've been here just a little over a year.
Yeah.
And like I said, when you came into Cirrius, you didn't have again an on ramp that have a lot of time to learn the job. The engagement manager job is, I kind of joke, there's not a job description. Like there's job descriptions for everybody else on the team, but your job is kind of everything else. And that there's no 2 days are the
True.
same and whatnot. Let's talk about your first year with Cirrius. You talked a little bit about how you landed here already, but as you think about, you said when you got on with John, you saw this as a place you wanted to get to. I got to think a year later, you go, oh, I didn't realize that. And not in a bad way necessarily, just things you've learned.
Yeah.
So as you think about what your trajectory over the first year was, and you consider what that looks like for you for your future here, what are some lessons that you've learned? What are some things about Cirrius that continue to inspire you? I think it's terribly important to have passion about getting up and doing what it is you do. A hard job is a hard job, but a hard job you don't enjoy is miserable.
Yeah.
So shine a little light there. How are you approaching your days, and what are you learning from it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely want to take the opportunity to say a year in, the values that drew me to this team still draw me to this team. And this company operates by its values. And it has proven that time and time again, even for me over the first year. And in my first year, I've had the great fortune to be aligned to some challenging projects with some challenging personalities, and situations, and not any challenging personalities on the Cirrius team. I'll say that much. Everybody I've worked with here has been great. And through that, I'm a firm believer, because of the experiences in my own life, that when things are difficult and when nobody's looking, those are the two places where our character is very clearly visible. And, in some difficult situations, Cirrius's character was clearly visible, and it's the real deal. And so it still draws me to this team and this company. I think maybe highlights from the first year, honestly, like I mentioned, I've been aligned to a couple projects in a row that had some really challenging situations, and we've been able to, as a team, bring stability and calm some significant heartburn, on the client side in some circumstances, and sign some new large contracts for additional work, and really restore trust in the working relationship. And that was just honestly blood, sweat, tears, and grit on the part of the team. There was no magic potion or pill or silver bullet. But one thing I was committed to, sitting in a leadership kind of role on our team, is, we are going to operate by our values. People are going to be what matter most, and we're going to collaborate. We're going to care for each other, and we're going to be transparent, and we're going to operate with integrity, and those things work.
Yeah, and I want to elaborate on that point. When you say we care for people and look out for each other, you're not just talking about your coworkers on Team Delta at Cirrius. You're also talking about the client.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that's I will say, for people who might watch this who don't really know anything about software, what you should know is a software consultant never does a project that doesn't bring change, right? I.e., the project is about going through change. And change, I don't care what your job or career is, change is hard. People resist it. I've been in project management of one type or the other for 30 years. And man, the stories I've heard and could tell about, client, you come in and do something. They go, well, this broke. I'm like, I wasn't even over there. What are you talking about? Like in software in particular, though, again, software is a tool. What we do is we go in and people, for one reason or the other, have been using one tool. They decide to quit using that tool, or are going to use it in a different way. And we come and help them navigate the waters of where they're at to where they say they want to go to. And I would argue that where they want to go to sometimes is only 10 to 20% visible. Maybe they know 75% of it, but they don't know the whole picture. That's why we're there. So helping a client see that, why do our values matter? At the end of the day, you can look at the stopwatch and the budget, and you can manage those things.
Mm-hmm.
But people management's a whole different animal. And I think you in particular, Jeff, have a remarkable skill there, how you bring the facts and how you communicate and are transparent there. But I just want to make sure for anybody that might listen who don't know what an engagement manager is and don't know what Salesforce is, to understand the context of that, because a lot of people probably say they work around good people and my boss has my back and whatever. And I'm not saying that doesn't always matter, but I think in what we do, how much it matters is immeasurable. It really is. And when the hard things happen, when hard decisions have to be made, when I look at the leadership, what they do in those moments, and then if they reach out across the company and say, hey, we've got an issue over here and we need some help, the willingness of people to drop what they're doing and come and be an accent to your team.
Yeah.
I mean, in all reality, if you're the one leading the team that's in that mess, maybe it's not even your own doing. It's just the nature of what's unpacking as you work with the client to help them business process and business transformation. For those in that system, it's hard. It's very, very hard. People rarely say, I made a lot of intentional steps to get here, right? They get to a place where they're leaving the software, but that software that they've used forever, they didn't wake up and go, I want that. They woke up and bought something, and then they built and they built and they built. And all of a sudden they don't recognize it. It won't scale. It no longer, this is not how we operate anymore, whatever, but it's what they know. I mean, it's like saying, instead of walking one foot in front of the other, I'm going to walk a whole different way this rest of my life. Like it's as unnatural as that. And so navigating that they're hard conversations. They are hard things to define, but we have to do it with passion. We have to do it with compassion. We have to do it within a budget, right? These are parameters of the war we fight. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of highlight some of that because it's not super obvious what we do to people who don't live in this space.
And I think that's what makes the engagement manager role at Cirrius unique, right? Everybody knows a project management kind of role encompasses project timelines, budgets, tasks, what is in the scope of your approved contract. But the other piece for us in that managing the relationship and the relationships within the engagement, it really is the most critical piece. And it's huge and it can get missed so easily. And it's just yet another way, right? Where Cirrius says, look, people are our success. So instead of having project manager roles, we have engagement manager roles that intentionally incorporate the people element. I love that.
It's you think about the things you did in your life that led you here, what those experiences taught you. I mean, absolutely. It's a very difficult position to hire for because there is no, engagement manager course in college. Salesforce education of itself is challenging, but I think that role in particular just warrants that you've weathered some storms, like you've been through some stuff. You've learned how to be in the middle of the mess, but be aware of what's outside it. Keep your eye on the horizon of where you're trying to get to. And a great friend of mine is actually a former pastor, but he's a strong personality type teacher. Great piece of advice that this will apply to anybody in any job anywhere in the world. When you don't know what to do next, do the next right thing.
Yeah.
Small things, and sometimes that's all you can do, right? When the stuff has hit the fan, so to speak, you've got to resort back to who you are. And I think what you're highlighting is that when you talk about character, when it gets hard, when it gets messy, character inevitably comes out. And when it comes out and you find that you're still aligned to the people that you're around, man, there's a piece that goes with that. I think it's one of the reasons I have passion for the military and civil servants, police, fire, whatnot. They've got this phrase, I've got your six. I don't know how much you're aware of that phrase or whatnot, but the cool thing there is, we're a team, right? Mm-hmm. You and I both are necessary. We may have different responsibilities, but we're a team. But if it comes down to it, and I'm looking this way and you're behind me, you've got my back. I don't have to question if you're going to stab in the back. I don't have to question, are you going to say something or do something that I'm going to have to cover up for, whatever. Like, I trust the people here to represent me, to be a type of ambassador, if you will. And there's a piece that, and I think that when you talk about people who've been at war and have come home, one of the greatest struggles service members find is finding that bond and trust in civilian life
Yeah,
that they
I
had
would
in
imagine
military. Like,
so.
you have no choice, but if I'm aiming my gun this way, that I know somebody's covering my vulnerabilities. Same thing in police. You got to have that kind of trust with your brothers and sisters who are in arms. So that may be a stretch to parallel what we're doing, but I think the character you're calling out, that's definitely an idea that makes doing a hard job easier.
Yeah, that level of trust and mutual alignment, mutual understanding as to how we, not just what we're doing, but how we are going to go about doing it is critical. And the example there you provide with check your six, I got your six. That's like the extreme example of what trust looks like. I literally have your life in my hands. And thankfully, what we're doing as engagement managers is typically not that high stakes.
Correct.
Haven't encountered that client yet, but it is just as important, honestly, for me, because people are what matters most. And so that requires that I bring my best every day and to every engagement, to every encounter, and trust and mutual respect is part of that.
Definitely. And I think the fact that we have so many veterans, even some active reservists on staff here, and a lot of military spouses, the fact that that culture of people makes up over 50% of our personnel, I think that just naturally bleeds over. Like again, we teach a lot of things in our K-12 grade system. You certainly can go learn things in college, or you can go to the School of Hard Knocks if that's where you get your experience and education from. But character's not generally a course you take, right? Character is something that's instilled in you. So as you talk about raising your kids, and it didn't even dawn on me, but I know you pretty much live close to or in the town you grew up in. I don't live there anymore, but I've gone back there a few times, and the town I grew up in changed a lot. Most towns do. If it hasn't changed, you probably can't afford to live there, because towns that don't change die. But inevitably, even though your kids are growing up in the same place you did, they're not growing up in the same culture that you did.
No.
So as you look outside your four walls and go down the street to the drugstore, the grocery store, the mall, whatever, those things look different. And so trying to navigate those things, both at work and at home, right? Those are challenges as a dad and a parent and whatnot. So looking again, I know this year has been a trying one. I know it's one that you have found great growth in. I know you've been blessed by the things you've learned and the people you've met. I think it's important to take inventory of the things we learn. I think if you don't stop and reflect, A, if you made mistakes, you're likely to repeat them. B, if you don't, in a world that's just negative and divided, if you don't take inventory of the wins, the lessons learned, the blessings, man, it just leads to a cancerous discontentment. And again, I know in what we do, it's not hard to get negative. Again, I wouldn't even say this is our client's fault. Like they're going through something really hard. We're trying to be in a supportive role, but the nature of how the communication goes sometimes is just tense, right? Everybody's struggling with accepting and swallowing how big this change is and how much it affects my life. And it's really easy to get caught up in the emotion of those moments, the calm and resolve that you can bring to the table. It's not personal.
No.
Whatever. So, inevitably, I'm sure you just appear to be a contemplative guy who's pondering those things. What are some lessons that Jeff has learned, and not so much about what the job is or how you do the job, but just, how has this affected you as a man, as a dad, as a husband? What are some things you learned over the last year or so?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have a routine of reflection, honestly, built into my life. And what I'll share here has sort of surfaced from those things. I try and do a weekly review and a monthly and a quarterly review. And there are work elements to that, because I always want to be bringing my best and growing as a worker and a leader. Bulk of it's personal. I think on the personal front, the biggest takeaway for me over the last year is that growing old is a gift. So don't take it for granted. And I realize that I look younger than I am, sliding into my mid 40s here. When Team Delta learned how old I was, they had some funny things to say about it. And so I was like, look, hey, I will ride that bus. I'll ride the babyface bus till the last stop it takes me to, right? But, I've had some weird health things. And, in the past several years, there have been some seasons where I battled some anxiety and just some mental health things and stuff that was never part of my radar when I was younger. I just sort of hit the midlife deal and the career change deal and a kid with special needs and the single income in an expensive life, all of these things, right? And realized, oh boy, maybe I'm not quite as healthy as I thought I was because of how this is affecting me. And it's interesting, that phrase, growing old is a gift. Mike Patchen, who works here at Cirrius, said that, and it's one of those situations where we've all had them, right? We're in a conversation and someone's talking and they say something that probably they don't even remember saying it, didn't really mean anything particularly special to them. But for the person listening, they latch onto it in that moment and sit with it. Well, that was one of those experiences for me. And sitting with that, I realized, being a husband and a father, a member of society, somebody in the workforce, and having the ability to meaningfully bring my best and to pursue my passions around people and making sure everybody's got a place at the table. And those things require me to be in the best possible place physically, emotionally, mentally, insofar as I'm able to influence those things. So I think the big takeaway for me over the last year has simply been, look, growing older is a gift. Let's not take that for granted. Let's figure out how to do that in the healthiest possible fashion, knowing that we can't control everything, but we sure can influence a lot of things.
Yeah. I think I'm reflecting on, I've got 2 kids who both are out of college. They're in their 20s. And there's some parallels you could draw between what you do as an engagement manager and trying to navigate the journey of raising kids. I remember friends of ours, when my kids were younger, we used to have dinner at their house a lot, and they had a sign on the wall that says, like, raising a teenager is like trying to nail Jell-O to a tree. If you don't understand that analogy, go try it. You'll understand what I'm saying. But the bottom line is, you don't really know what you're going to be faced with any given day. You cannot control everything. You have to have something you fall back on. And that, again, I'm going to go back to that character, that when all else fails, your character is what you're going to fall on. And what does that mean? What that means is I can try to do all the prep in the world to navigate and be ready for things, but inevitably things are going to come that I wasn't prepared for, that I didn't have a plan for, maybe a better way of saying that. And in that moment, what are you going to resort to? A, don't be emotional. B, it's not personal. C, what are some things that I did do that are actually things I can leverage in how I respond rather than react? And it,
very important.
when you have a health issue, when you have a kid with special needs, when there's a car wreck, when there's a bill you can't pay, right? But these are just things that we all face at some point. But why working at a company? Why being around people that have that character, who insist on it, you can trust in it? Why does that matter? Is because at the end of the day, this is a big part of our life. It does affect how healthy I can be for my spouse. It does affect how patient I can be with my kids. It does affect how I plug in at my church, or how I play sports, or anything you do outside of work is affected by what you do inside of work.
So true.
And what you allow that to do with your mind, man. And I got to say, whether you're employee or quarter or not, like, just the respect and admiration I have for how you came in. I think watching what you did in your role taught me things about things I didn't do right in that role. And I've learned from you, man. It's just truly an honor to get to see, again, that character play out, man. You are a man unquestionably of great character. And it's a real privilege to have you here at Cirrius. So I'm glad to have a chance to talk to you about it today. Let's get back outside of work a little bit. Like, as we start thinking about wrapping this up, like, we could probably talk about Salesforce all day. We talk about some of those clients and projects all day.
Sure.
We're grateful for our clients, but at the end of the day, we work to live. So let's wrap Jeff up in a bow. Not physically. Let's talk about, when the bell rings and the last meeting is finished, and you go and this is for people that don't work from home, they might not can relate to this, but I don't have a 40-minute drive home that I have time to decompress whatever the day did to me before I go and see my kids. Like, it's literally 30 seconds when I'm off work. I'm faced with my wife or my child or a neighbor or a dog or whatever else is going on.
All the above.
All the above. If the day's right, it is a job that draws on you.
Mm-hmm.
I know in marriage, there's a lot of parallels. It talks about your cup being filled up, that for me to be a good husband to my wife, I need to find the things that motivates her, and I need to speak into those things. That people call those love languages. There's a great book about that.
Read it.
That I pour into the tank, the things that drive her. I need to find a way to pour those things into her so she can be her best, and she should do the same for me. But the things we do during the day, like these draw from your cup. They definitely consume the part of you that you have to leave here and then go give to your family.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be recharged. We all do. So when you get out of here, like, what are the things that you want to go do? We talked about your motorcycle a little bit, but how do you maintain that work-life balance? That's, God knows how many books have been written about this, but I think to be at a place that have the kind of people and character we have is a blessing. To be one of those people takes work. To remain true to that, not to be overcome by the depth and the strength and the trials of just being in change management, if you will. But how does Jeff, you mentioned the ritual of reflection, but what are some things that you do to recharge so that you make sure you're bringing your best every day?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the commute home, and while I don't have one of those, I have built in a functional equivalent in that I take a walk after work every day. I sign off, shut down the computer, and I head outside and I walk 15, 30 minutes, just sort of depends on the flavor of the day, to be honest. And part of that is functional in that I sit, even with a standing desk, you sit so
Right.
much in our
Right.
world of fully distributed remote work. But the other part of that is I want to be able to be fully present with my family, my wife, and that is a helpful switch for me. In terms of recharging, sort of on the daily or weekly or on ongoing fashion, unscheduled, spontaneous days are really important to me in my personality. Having the space to simply let it happen as it's going to happen, whether that's me individually or me and my wife or us as a whole family, that is really life-giving to me. My wife and I having date nights is something we try and be really intentional about keeping in our rhythm. It's more challenging than ever with the pace and schedules of our kids at the stages they're at, but that's very recharging for us to be away together. And then I think the final one, well, you mentioned that, I've sort of got a rhythm or a ritual of reflection that's really important to my personality. But I guess the other side of that sort of introspective coin is I try and always be learning something new. What that's looked like lately in recent months is I've been doing a lot of reading in the afternoons and evenings when I have a little pocket of time to myself, like afternoons on the weekend or evening after the kids are in bed, reading about different perspectives, reading about history, reading about the world, reading about culture. Those are the kinds of things that interest me because they're connected to my passion for people and figuring out how to help us collectively be a better people that more genuinely care for one another, regardless of who we are and where we're from and what our trajectory is. And that's really recharging to me, just constantly having some kind of input that's challenging me to think and feel and consider things differently than what is my default state.
I'm reading a book right now. The name of the book, of all things, called Margin. Um,
Ah,
Came across this. I don't read a ton. My personality is ADD. The voices get louder as I get older, and
yeah.
I sit down and I try to read, and I look at the page, and my brain's going to 800 tasks and whatnot. So I listen to a lot of podcasts because I'm consuming things,
Mhm.
I'm learning things. I just don't do it through reading. I learn better through listening. But this is about a dad who, by all definitions, the American dream had arrived. His family was doing well, and him and his wife were building a house, and like the house was roughed in, but they weren't living there yet. And the kids were off one night, and they had a couple of couples over to the new home, and they were grilling out, and they were going to stay in the new house that wasn't done, just
Yeah.
as a ritual of kind of making this, start embracing it as home. And that night, their oldest kid, he had been divorced and remarried. So his ex-wife and her husband had taken their son to a Oklahoma Sooners football game, and on the way home, they were hit by a drunk driver, and the kid
Mm.
died at 13 years old.
Oof.
So a lot of lessons to be gained from that. If you're a parent, you can only begin to fathom what that faced. But the word margin is something somebody whispered that in my ear 20 years ago, and it's a
Mm.
lens through which I try to reflect as well. But uh, coming full circle, we came back to when you first got married and you worked in the church, and we talked about that season a little bit. Man, it is so easy to get married, say I do, have kids, buy a house, get a car, and you look up and
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're in your mid 40s and you're like, I got to
Yeah.
think about retirement now. And I haven't been thinking about whatever, right? You become a passenger in a lot of ways. And then you get kids that are teenagers and they're in sports and they're not driving yet. Man, you're tethered to the mom taxi and whatever. But the bottom line is there's no margin in your life. Every minute, every dollar, every ounce of energy seems to be spoken for.
Mm.
Kind of coming back again full circle about Cirrius, about why we're different as a company. A lot of consulting companies, like the people are expected to bill 30, 45, 55, 60 hours a week. And that's not how we operate here. Our company model of people first is lived out by the fact that we allow margin to be built into every week. And what that means to you personally, what it means to me personally, is inevitably when that thing comes that's hard that I hadn't planned for, I'm not taxed to the hilt. I haven't spent every dollar. I haven't spent every second. So if I've got to stop and go walk for 10 minutes, because if I don't, I'm not going to bring the healthiest thing back to my spouse as I come downstairs, or to my kid as they come in from school and I'm getting off work. To bring the highest value to those people, I've got to be my best. And I cannot do that if I'm wrung out.
Yep.
And man, I'm not one bit surprised that you have that in your life. You exude that in how you talk, how you walk, and how you do the things you do. But it's a great, great lesson. I think it's probably why everybody recognized that they're better for being in your presence. Iron sharpens iron. I know Tim say that a lot. The margin that we're able to have, people like Mike, just speaking in the wisdom, the company-wide meetings and things that we have make us better. And if we're better individuals, we'll be better teams. If we're better teams, we'll be a better company. If all those things are true, I'm going to be better to my family when I walk in the door or walk down the stairs in my case. Man, just truly, truly a pleasure to journey this with you, dude. We'll probably have to follow up here, even if it's not recorded, just because I've got questions. But that was kind of my list of things to ask you about today. But, at the end of the day, you're looking in the camera with a mic. If there's one thing you want to throw out there to know Jeff as to blank, or your advice to anybody about just operating in margin or having character, what would you close us out with?
People are what matter. We live in a world that is angry and fractured. And regardless of what we think and feel or conclusions that we've come to personally, we all need to remember that people are what matter. And being a person, being a human being, means that we deserve respect and honor and a seat at the collective table of humanity. And nobody should be excluded from that. And that's what my life is about. And I hope that as I live it, I have the opportunity to be an inspiration to other people to decide to live life in a similar fashion, such that people are what matter most.
Well, I can attest that you've made at least one difference, man. Truly. I appreciate the time you spent with us today. Blessings to you and your wife and your kids. I hope that you're able to maintain that margin and character and space in there, that regardless of what season comes, that you never get in a place you have to deviate from that. It's great to get to know you a little better today, Jeff. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great privilege to chat with you, and a great honor to be featured on our podcast here, and just really appreciate the opportunity.
There goes that bell, right? All right, Jeff. Thank you very much, man. Have a good day.
All right. You as well. Bye.
Every day, we face moments that define us, not by the challenges that come our way, but how we choose to meet them. At Cirrius, we believe that when you put people first, extraordinary things will happen. It's in those pivotal seconds when we pause to respond rather than react, when we choose calm over chaos, that we discover our true potential. This is where real growth will happen, not in comfort, but in the relentless pursuit of excellence, in owning every moment, and in the unwavering commitment to serve others with everything that we've got. Reflection isn't just a habit, it's a discipline that sharpens us. Gratitude isn't just a feeling, it's the fuel that drives us to give more. Every experience is a chance to get better, to push further, and to raise the standard for ourselves and everyone around us. Thank you for joining us today as we honor those who embody the people-first mindset at the deepest level. Their story leaves no doubt. When we take full responsibility for our impact and serve with purpose, we don't just change ourselves, we set a new standard for what's possible. Let's carry that standard forward. Until next time, own your impact, serve with intent, and keep putting people first.